Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're going to talk some Nebraska and Northwestern today, and also break down some of the recent recruiting news that's been going on with the Cornhuskers. It was a nice win for volleyball last night as well. But Danny, how you doing this morning and this Thursday, 2 days from kickoff?
I can't wait. It's Thursday. It's almost the weekend, and it's almost time to build the little mini winning streak. So I can't complain either way. And I found a picture that I posted on one of our pages from the 2000 Alamo Bowl, 66-17 Nebraska win. And I don't think we're gonna get a 66-17 win on Saturday, but I do hope for a win nonetheless. It's interesting, just how we've been able to beat Northwestern over the years. You had the game where Jacques Yant ran all over Northwestern in 2021. Then you had the game in 2019 where Lane McCollum, who was like a walk-on kicker who played soccer in high school, kicked the game-winning field goal. And then, of course, we have the infamous game last year. So it's never been a dull game against Northwestern. There's always been a lot of highs and some lows. So I'm expecting another good one on Saturday.
Yeah, the Eric Crouch, of course, he
Yeah,
was the star back in the 66-17 game. Had a lot of great players, actually. I believe that was Bobby Newcomb's last game as a Husker. A top 10 team, actually, probably should have been in a better game than the Alamo Bowl, but the
I
Big
agree.
12 had some issues with bowl tie-ins back in the day, so it was kind of if you didn't make it to one of the big games, you kind of got screwed. But at any rate, yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. I guess to start, let's talk some recruiting before we get to Northwestern. There's been a few, things I guess since this week. We talked on Monday about the Grant Bricks prediction to Oklahoma and kind of some updates there. There's been a bit of a shakeup, with edge recruiting. It seems like Jay Sean Ross, who we mentioned, he's visiting Kansas State now. Is going to be making a decision this month, so that is kind of trending the wrong direction for Nebraska. They've got another guy who was a Texas Tech commit, Jackson Lee's not ranked, opposed to where Ross is a 4-star right now. Jackson Lee's not ranked. He has got a prediction for Nebraska, got an offer this week, and he's going to visit, I think, this weekend for the Northwestern game. So that's one to watch. 6'2", 222, he's got 7 sacks this season. But that looks like they've shifted their kind of priority at edge over to Jackson Lee from Jay Sean Ross.
Which means that Jay Sean Ross probably is not coming here. I mean, he's been a difficult recruitment to kind of read because if you remember, over the summer he kind of reopened up his recruitment again, even though he never officially, committed anywhere. So it's kind of been a little bit difficult to read his recruitment, overall. And then Nebraska's also going to get a visit from um, cornerback Larry Tarver. He's from Miami Gardens. He committed to FIU in April, decommitted from FIU, then committed to Maryland, and now he's looking at Nebraska. So, I mean, who knows where that could lead? Another secondary player would be great. I talked yesterday how we're gonna, lose the likes, I believe, of Omar Brown and Quentin Newsom. So, we definitely need depth at the secondary position. We already have some good incoming depth, and Mario Buford, kind of headlines that group. But, with the way the Big Ten, or soon to be, as I like to call it, the Big 100, how that's shaping up with all the high-powered offenses, more defensive backs is never a bad thing.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, how that all kind of shakes out. With different visits and stuff that it's definitely looking like Nebraska's going to be taking more recruits in this class. They've also had some JUCO offers this week. Damon Dumas, the former 5-star from Texas A&M. Trey Richardson was another JUCO that they offered, who's kind of a kick returner type. So still looking for, like wide receiver type talent. They've got projected for Dumas after they offered him. Some other teams have been sniffing around there, but so yeah, I guess the idea that Nebraska was, mostly done in this class. I mean, yeah, for the most part, like 90% done, but they're trying to hold these commitments and still trying to add some others to, address some needs for the future.
Well, as we're seeing at the wide receiver position, especially, depth is important. And, We have, and the thing is, we have, good wide receivers coming in, but they're not developed yet, or they, quite frankly, haven't even arrived on campus yet. So there is a need for, wide receivers and edge players and things like that, because there is some coming on the horizon, but you know, between we just saw, this past off season before the season began, losing Xavier Betts, and then during the season the Marcus Washington injury, and things can happen quickly. So it's better to be, crowded at a position, in my opinion, than to have little depth at all, which is what we've had, meaning little depth in past years.
And yeah, a lot of people made with the the Dumas kid with the he had an assault charge. It got dropped, so he didn't even get kind of convicted or anything with that. So I mean, there's that whole prospect of it. But his current community college or as JUCO coach has said, that he's been one of the best leaders on the team. He's been productive this year. He did have a season with Texas A&M where he played. He caught like 19 passes for 230 yards. So I mean, this kid can play. He's got the ties to Texas, and it's not like Nebraska's the only one recruiting him. Matt Rule obviously has shown his penchant for giving players second chances, but this guy I think has definitely earned one. I mean, he's gone through all the right steps, and so I don't have like a big concern about him like getting on the field. I know Nebraska obviously had some issues with Arik Gilbert, but I mean that every situation is different. So I know a lot of people kind of attacked that part of it, but it's like I'm not really too worried about it. People make mistakes, and he seems like a really talented player. And if he can keep his head on straight, then I think he would be a great addition to this roster.
And not for nothing, but we've also seen, how quickly Matt Rule has handled any potential fires, with the Bob Wager, incident and the stuff that came out. Wager was replaced very quickly. So while I think Rule is definitely going to give people a second chance, he's also not going to give them a long leash, so to speak.
And then yeah, that's pretty much it. And I guess in terms of the recruiting notes, obviously still watching Grant Bricks, Caleb Benning, those guys. But some new visitors, Andrew Dennis, I guess, is another guy who might be taking a visit. He's an offensive lineman Nebraska offered. He's 6'5", but he's listed as an interior lineman, so I'm not really sure, how that kind of fits into things.
Yeah.
But at any rate, to switch gears now, let's talk about Northwestern. Nebraska's 12-point favorite, coming into this matchup. Both teams are coming off a bye game, or a bye week, excuse me. Both teams are 3-3, 1-2 in the Big Ten. I know, like I said on Monday, everybody acts like Northwestern hasn't won any games. They've won some football games this year. And Ben Bryant, their quarterback, when healthy, their preferred starter, he's pretty talented. He was a starter, last year at Cincinnati, threw for over 3,000 yards. Excuse me, I'm having trouble today. Over 20 touchdowns. He had, I think, like 397 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns in their comeback win against Minnesota. And so they scored almost 40 points and we scored like 10. So I mean, this isn't a game that if Nebraska they can't just show up and win. That
Right.
they definitely have to play well. And what are your keys? I guess just some of the basic keys for you if Nebraska's going to win this game.
Red zone conversions. And this defense, I feel comfortable saying at this point in the season that they're going to play well and they're going to give the offense, decent field position with stops and you know kind of harassing the Northwestern offense. But that's all well and good, but the offense needs to convert in the red zone. They need to come up with a solid plan in the red zone, and because quite honestly, we probably left at least 2 touchdowns on the board against Illinois. And, yes, we won 23-7, but there were a lot of frustrating, opportunities missed. So converting in the red zone and play calling in the red zone is going to be important. And then I guess the other, big thing for me would be to kind of, you know, avoid third and longs offensively, because it really limits. You have to, understand, and I'm just speaking for the fans too, and that Heinrich Harburg is not the type of player that can just air the football out. We're not going to score 75 points. We're going to have a ground and pound type of game. It's not going to be pretty. It may not even look good sometimes, but it has been proven to work. And putting Harburg in the offense in third and longs is not the recipe for success. Third and 5, that's more manageable. Third and short, yeah, but I guess limiting you know down in distances on offense is going to be extremely important. And to that end, I guess kind of the 1B to this point, offensive line penalties, which have been plentiful over the past couple weeks, they need to cut that out immediately. And if they don't, it just makes the offense's life so much harder.
Yeah, I mean, those are all good points. I think, when you talked about the down and distance, that kind of leads into one of my keys where I think Nebraska's really got to run the football. I mean, that's really the way that this team is going to move the ball. It's Heinrich Haarberg running it, Anthony Grant running it, and then, trying to create kind of a few big plays in the passing game. But if Haarberg's throwing it more than 20 times, then
Yeah.
Nebraska's game plan has not worked, essentially. I mean, yeah, maybe like 20, low 20s, but that's the sweet spot, 18 to 22 attempts, with Harburg. And yeah, I think he's got to run. Like if he doesn't, you look at the one game since he started where they weren't able to get anything going was that Michigan game. And they just, Michigan just bottled him up running the football. And I think if Northwestern is able to do that and they're able to stop, the quarterback running specifically, I think that this offense is really going to struggle. So between him and Anthony Grant, I think they got to get about 150 yards or so, and I definitely think that they're very capable of doing that. Another thing about Northwestern is they don't turn the football over, and so Nebraska has to take care of the ball. That's obviously been a theme this entire season. We've seen. I mean, luckily the turnovers didn't cost Nebraska against Illinois, but they really could have. And so just they need to cut those mistakes out, take care of the football, and as long as they can do that, take care of the ball and establish the run, I don't see Northwestern, winning this game. I really don't.
I don't either. I mean, nothing pops out at me and says, "Oh, let's watch out for Northwestern because of reason, X." I still think Nebraska should be able to beat them. It's more about Nebraska not beating themselves.
Yeah, yeah, you have to execute in the red zone, and you can't fumble the football away, and you can't, that's the way that Nebraska can lose this game is by being -2 in the turnover margin. That's the way that Northwestern can come back and can steal this one because talent
Yep.
wise, Nebraska is a better team. Um, you know, and the thing about it with the quarterback situation is Northwestern potentially, I mean, you can make a case that Ben Bryant, at least as a passer, is the better quarterback, in terms of, if these two are matching up. But he's also got an oblique issue that he's been dealing with since the Penn State game. So he might not even play on Saturday. So there's that kind of whole aspect of it as well. And, again, when I look at these two teams, and I look at what Nebraska does well, right? They're second in the Big Ten in rushing yards, and I think they're second in the Big Ten in rush defense. They might even be
Yep.
first. I haven't checked, but at any rate, that's the formula. That's the formula, like out rushing Northwestern like 200 to 60. That's how Nebraska, can win this game with ease, I guess I would say.
And we talked about at the beginning of the season, Nebraska struggling to find their identity offensively. We always kind of knew what it was defensively, but now since the season has progressed, this is a running team. I think they found their identity, run the football with some passes mixed in to kind of really help out the offense. But this is a running football team. They found their identity, and people will say, "Oh, we're not getting enough, production out of the running back position, and it's all the quarterback." Hey, as long as the quarterback stays healthy and we move the ball forward, I wouldn't really be too concerned about where it's coming from. I get that you don't want your quarterback to run a lot, but at this point, as long as he's stays healthy and as long as we keep moving the football and as long as that leads to points and wins, I wouldn't worry about too much about where the production is coming from, especially given all the injuries at the running back position this year.
And I think that's why, I know that Matt Rule said, Heinrich Haarberg's QB1, and I think he will be as long as he continues to play well. But I think that's also why it is important that Jeff Sims, is healthy, because I think whoever the quarterback is, the game play, I mean, because if Sims is the quarterback, I don't want him throwing the ball more than 20 times either. So, I mean, whichever, and that's been their best asset so far this season. I get, and Heinrich, I will say he's done a spectacular job of taking care of the football and not throwing interceptions. I mean, that's not been his issue with Nebraska. That the problem has been, guys holding onto the football, and so we'll see. The thing about Northwestern, they don't turn it over, and they don't beat themselves. They're going to be solid. They're getting the most out of their roster. So I mean, you got to give them credit for that. Um, looking at this game, obviously both teams have had bye weeks, which is always kind of interesting. They've had Nebraska, from a Nebraska perspective, they've had 2 weeks to, try to get Malachi Coleman involved, try to get some of these guys healthy. So what do you think, if you can point to, maybe one or two things that's going to be an X factor, in this game on either side for either team?
Well, I think Malachi Coleman is going to start, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
So I mean, he's on the depth chart as a starter, so whatever that, take it for what it is. But yeah, he's definitely going to play a lot more, is my read.
I heard a lot, and in my read too is that Jalen Lloyd and Jaden Doss might play a lot more as well. So I think honestly, just as like one big X factor point for me, get the freshmen involved, see what they have. I mean, you recruited these high level recruits here in Coleman for a reason because he's a playmaker, and I understand he's a freshman and things aren't always going to go smoothly, but it's time to see what they have because one of the things that Nebraska hasn't done in past years is development and developing the freshmen to a point where they can contribute by their junior or even sophomore years. Now it's the time to develop the freshmen and see what Coleman has, see what Dost has, see what Lloyd has, and because I think those three are going to be very important for the future of the wide receiver room, and especially when you consider the guys coming in as well, and Hall and you know McMorris continuing the line of development while Hall and McMorris get ready by having Coleman, Doss, and Lloyd contributing at a high level. We'll just continue to restock the wide receiver position because we've had trouble recruiting wide receivers over the years, and I don't think that's going to be the case with this staff.
Yeah, Malachi definitely is, one of my X factors as well. And him more than anybody else, just because I think he gets, with the size and speed combination that he's got, I think he brings something that nobody else on the roster really has. And so I've been saying it, not that you can't just obviously throw the ball deep and throw it up to a guy, but if they could,
Right.
find some type of play action opportunity where he gets a chance on a deep route, like I would love to see what that looked like. He had a shot he was wide open last week, and Heinrich missed him. What would have been a big gain, but I really think, he's a big time player. It's going to be fun to watch him start, and I'm just interested to see how they've kind of incorporated him into the offense over the past 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
at the same time, if he doesn't, if he doesn't make a catch, that doesn't mean that he's like a bust or anything. That's just, for one, this offense is going to be, there's going to be limited production in the passing game, and two,
Yeah.
you know, we just don't know. I mean, all the routes that they're comfortable running with him, and all that type of stuff. So I do think that they're going to try to get those guys opportunities, but at the same time, I think if those opportunities don't come to fruition, let's just be patient. It's going to take time for those guys to develop, especially with Harburg. But I'm hoping that connection will kind of, um, just get a little bit tighter, I guess, is the best. I'm just hoping that those guys can, get a little bit more on the same page. Harburg with all the receivers over the bye week. And then I guess the other X factor for me, it's just more of a health thing, because is Ben Bryant going to start this game for Northwestern? They haven't really said. Brandon Sullivan, the backup quarterback, led him to 23 points against Howard. So, if you're only scoring 23 points against Howard, I don't see you having a ton of success against this Nebraska defense, which, like you said, is pretty good. So I think that's going to be a big factor in this game, is just whether or not Northwestern, has their starting quarterback or not. And we'll probably find that out, a little bit before kickoff. So that's something to watch. I think that could really change, this game one way or another if he's not able to play.
Yeah, and I think, defensively getting off the field on third down, I don't think that will be as big a problem against a team like Northwestern, but, not giving the Northwestern offense multiple chances, you know, just staying penalty free and things like that, because I think, kind of going back to the offense again, I hate to do it, but it factors a lot into the game. You can't you don't have much room for error defensively when you have an offense that is new and trying to get all the pieces together. So just getting off the field on third down and being able to create turnovers. I'd like to see at least an interception on Saturday, and I thought Nebraska did a good job. I believe they had an interception against Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Newsom or was it somebody else? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think just getting off the field on third down is going to be important. And on that end, I guess starting quickly because they started off slow against Illinois, and the goal line stand really sparked solid play throughout the rest of the game. In my opinion, that was a nice play by Van Poppel, but starting quickly defensively and getting off the field on third down is going to be important on Saturday, just because of the way Nebraska's offense is. You can't really afford to make too many mistakes on the other side of the ball as well.
Yeah, I mean these two offenses right now rank, one Nebraska's 122nd in scoring, Northwestern is 108. So I mean that's kind of what we're looking at, in terms of these two teams. But two very different styles. Northwestern wants to throw, Nebraska wants to run. But like I said earlier this week, if you didn't catch the Monday episode, Northwestern is last in the Big Ten in sacks allowed, and they're last in sacking the quarterback. So I mean, if you're not able to run the football, and I think that if Nebraska can make them one dimensional, I think that's going to lead to a 4 or 5 sack game. To be honest, especially if they've got the backup quarterback, I think Tony White's just going to eat his lunch, in terms of like throwing different schemes and stuff. And I think he's going to do the same to Ben Bryant. I just think that Ben Bryant will probably be able to handle that stuff a little bit more. But I think Nebraska's defense has got to be pretty excited, and frankly, they shouldn't. I mean, just looking at this roster, they shouldn't give up more than 10 points to this Northwestern team. If this defense is it what we think it is, this should be, Northwestern should not score more than 10. So that's my read on it. But you still got to go out and execute, and you still got to go out and do it. Another X factor I should say too, Thomas Fidoni's been getting better every single week, and now he's got this bye week. I don't think we're going to see like the real Thomas Fidoni until next season. Like he's getting better. I think next year we're really going to see him like fully. Like right now, he's probably, even though in his mind he's probably like 100%, he's probably more like 95%, just like getting that trust in and building that strength back. But he is becoming more of a factor, and I definitely think in these next 6 games, I think he's going to be even better than he was during the first 6.
Yeah, and if this is him at even say 75%, I mean, I can't wait to see what he does next year because he's
Yeah,
really
that's
provided.
pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, because he's really provided a good safety valve for Heinrich Harburg. Him and Harburg have had a strong connection, and he's also, when I watched his high school tape and I wrote about him back in the day, I was really impressed, with the way that he ran his routes, but I'm also very impressed with the way he catches the football. He's a very sure-handed tight end, in my opinion. He's got a big, not big wingspan, can make difficult catches. So that part's impressed me as well. And I can't wait to see what he does. Not only for the rest of this year, but next year as well. It must feel great to get back out on the field after just suffering setback after setback, and he's making the most of his opportunity. Again, his stats may be a little low, but this is not a passing offense. This is a running offense, and he's making the most of the opportunities he gets, especially in the red zone. And that's where your bread is going to be buttered when it comes to winning a football game, the red zone itself.
And you look at the last 4 games, didn't have a catch against Minnesota, had 2 for 13 against Colorado, but in the last 4 games, he's had multiple catches. Well, I guess in 4 of his last 5 games. The one game he didn't, he had a 29-yard touchdown reception. So I think the thing that stands out to me against Illinois, he had a 21-yard reception. Against Michigan, a 17-yarder. Against Louisiana Tech, 29. Northern Illinois, 20. So 3 of the last 4 games, he's had anything over 20 yards.
Yeah.
I categorize as an explosive play. So he's had an explosive play in 3 or 4 games, and he just had a 17-yarder against Michigan. So he's starting to create those kind of big plays. And even though, you don't think of this as like a big play offense, but Thomas Fidoni's been creating some. And so that's been huge. And hopefully, that can continue down the stretch.
And also go ahead. Were you gonna
Nope,
say
go
something?
ahead.
I
No,
was
I
gonna
was just saying.
say, looking at explosive players again, not a ton of production statistically, but a guy like Alex Bullock, he's been really kind of sure-handed. He had 2 catches for 16 yards against Illinois, including a tough sidearm throw from Harburg on the run. I believe it was in the third quarter. So again, not a ton of production, but that's okay because guys like Fedoni, guys like Bullock, they're there. They're there when you need you, and Nebraska really hasn't had receivers like that in quite a while. So it's good to see, not only Fedoni but Bullock kind of develop into his role and play it well.
Yeah, it's been good. There's been a lot of walk on in-state types, Bullock, Taihan, Harburg from Kearney. So it's been Phelan Sanford. It's been fun to see, some of these in-state guys, earn their role and then make some big plays in some
Isaac
big
Gifford,
games.
Isaac
Yeah,
Gifford on the
Isaac
defensive
Gifford.
side.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah, so it's been fun to see that. So now that we've talked about this matchup a little bit, we are going to have our chat on Saturday, our pregame chat. So join us for that. But right now on Thursday morning, we got our predictions against the spread. Nebraska 12-point favorite. Danny, it's prediction time, man. Who you got and what's the score?
I'm awful at these, but 27-14 Nebraska. That's my. I'm hoping it's less, but I just don't see this being a high scoring game for either side at all.
Yeah, I don't see there being a ton of points. I'm thinking, yeah, something similar. I'm gonna say 27-10 Nebraska, maybe 31-10. You can check out Husker, bigred.com, and I'll give you my final prediction. But somewhere in there, I think Nebraska is gonna cover the spread. And I just don't see Northwestern scoring more than 10 points. I think the defense is gonna get 4 or 5 sacks, and I think Heinrich Harburg, either Harburg or Grant, I think they're both going to push in that 100-yard range. I think one of them is going to break off a long run and get to 100 yards. But I think together, both of them, they're going to combine for about 175. I think the Huskers rush for a couple touchdowns, and I think they get to 4-3 on the season. So that's my prediction, and hopefully that will come true.
And to be completely honest with you, if this was a Pat Fitzgerald led team right now, I'd be a little bit more nervous. But not having Pat Fitzgerald in the equation, you know, just from a football standpoint, he always played Nebraska tough, and he was always very good at in-game, adjustments and strategizing. So with him not being there, I mean, I think that also truthfully helps Nebraska as well. I mean, I'm not going to get into all this other stuff, but just from a football standpoint, I think not having Pat Fitzgerald on the sideline is, an asset to Nebraska.
It definitely, I think it is. I think you do have to give David Braun,
Oh
the
yeah.
interim head coach. I mean, I didn't think they were going to win 3 games all season. So the fact that they got, I mean, I guess looking at the non-conference schedule, but I didn't expect them to win a Big Ten game. So the fact that they've already done
Yeah.
that and are still, they still have a lot to play for. They're only 3 games away from a bowl game too. And last year, I think they only won 3 games all season. So I mean, this is a big matchup for both teams. I know it's not, going to be college football playoff talk and it's not going to be like leading on ESPN, but this is a big game for both programs. And this David Braun guy, I mean, if he can get this team to a bowl game, I mean, maybe he's the next head coach. So you never really know. And you can't take anything for granted, especially in the Big Ten. I mean, they've got some Northwestern does have some good players. I mean, they've got AJ Henning, who was at Michigan last year. Charlie Menagerie, I think is his name. He had a touchdown catch against Minnesota. So, I think he had some plays against Nebraska last year too, if I remember correctly. But at any rate, this is a very winnable game for Nebraska. It's a must-win game, I think, if they want to get to a bowl game, and so that's why. They've got to come out and take care of business on Saturday. In terms of us, we will be back here. Like I said, we'll be doing our chat on Saturday about 6:30. Well, that's my time. Sorry, folks. About 7:30 Central Time. So hop on here. You can join us for a little pregame chat. We can talk some recruiting, Northwestern, whatever. Make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out. Hit the like button. Let us know what you think with your comments. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.